fresh off the road.
Fresh off the road.
Okay, so where were you last night?
Last night I was in Hico, Texas
Okay.
at Ice, which is a little restaurant that hosts music on Friday nights. Been playing for quite a while.
Okay. That's different from Hico Hall?
It is. Same owners, same folks.
Okay.
They have both those places. In the Hico Hall, I've done a couple of the Sundays, and then they do Friday nights at this place. Yeah, Ice, and I love playing it. It's one of my regular stops.
It's a great town.
It's a great town. I've met so many wonderful people down there, and I love it.
Yeah. And then, so you had a lunch show today. You're fresh off a lunch show too?
Lunch show today at Double D's in Bluffdale. My buddy Dana over there. It's a great little spot if you ever get down there. But they have Josh Weathers playing two shows tonight, and I was originally scheduled for this evening, but I'm not gonna get in the way of two Josh Weathers shows, and so
Yeah.
I went and did a lunch gig, and it was great.
I did a little snooping on this gig that it's like a FFA benefit that our band does every February or something. And I just did a little casual snooping. I hadn't heard from them, did a little, hey, what's going on this year? What do y'all, I did it kind of roundabout, not going, hey, are we on for this year?
Yeah.
And she was like, well, it's the 20th anniversary and we got Josh. I was like, okay. Yeah. All right, good.
He's a powerhouse. He's playing Valentine's Day in Tulsa at the Merc, and I always feel like the Merc for out of town people, which is such a great place to play. Tulsa, one of the things I love about it is it turns out for its people. Like if you're from Tulsa, you're playing in Tulsa, people turn out for you. It's an incredible thing. As someone who has tried to bring friends into Tulsa to play, sometimes they're less. That's just not so much their thing, which is not uncommon. I think in a lot of places,
I think Denton's that way too.
Yeah, I've heard that. And but Josh Weathers, man, those tickets go on sale and they're gone.
People love him.
He's a pro, man.
Yeah, very talented.
He's a pro.
Charismatic. He's got it down.
He does.
Tulsa. Did we talk about the Bob Dylan Center?
I think we did.
Have you been?
I have. I've been a couple times.
Okay.
Every time somebody comes to town that wants to go, I'm there.
That's going to be me.
Yeah. I'll go. It's incredible. It's a wonderful space.
Have you seen A Complete Unknown?
I have not. I was actually thinking of you because I think I saw that you went and saw it, and I have not yet. I'm actually going. I'm leaving, so I have a wild trip. I was down here these 2 days, driving home as soon as we're done here. I'm home all day tomorrow, and then I'm driving to Minneapolis Monday for 6 days. I do the second week of January every year in balmy Minneapolis.
Okay.
A big stretch of gigs that I've done now for 3 years in a row.
You gonna go see it up there in his
I
homeland?
was kind of thinking that. Yeah, I have a really good friend up there who produced my EP, and I get to stay at the studio with him, and he's got a little spot I get to crash. But we're both big Dylan fans, so I might see if he wants to go one afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What have you heard about it?
I mean, honestly, the funny thing is, even people. I'll be honest. I saw the trailer and I was like, I don't know if I really am gonna like this. I was kind of, I've read all the books and I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But everyone I know whose opinion I trust that's seen it said it was great. They loved it.
Yeah, I think on paper, hearing about it, I thought, no good. I was actually hooked by the trailer, or like the first teaser of it.
Yeah.
It was like him doing A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, I think, and like this sort of camera movement where it starts sort of behind him, and it just sort of evoked like, oh man, I know the photograph there. They're like aping there, or the footage they're aping there, and there's a lot of that.
Sure.
There's a lot of little Easter eggs like that where you're like, okay, well that you kind of nailed that spot on.
Yeah.
And when it gets around to his face, like, okay, he's obviously a much more attractive person.
Yeah, right.
Like, and that's everybody.
Better teeth.
Yeah, the whole crew. Like that's Joan Baez too, who's, smoke show, herself, but they found someone more attractive than her even.
Yeah. The thing I'm excited about is like, I think even last time I talked about how like impactful Oh Brother Where Art Thou was to me. Like I came up in that generation where like that was my introduction to like traditional music, which obviously is such a big part of what I play now.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited that like I think there's a whole generation of folks that like, I'm preaching to the choir that Dylan to me is
right.
I think if there's one person I had to listen to, he's done everything I can.
Yeah.
It would be my desert island artist, and I'm excited for it to have that renaissance. And I saw they're releasing the soundtrack of like Timothy singing Dylan songs and all that. And
Did you see he's going to be on SNL?
No.
He's performing, like he's hosting and performing.
Yeah,
I mean, the end of the month.
I'm excited for other people to be as excited. Yeah. Like, Dylan has for 50 years been changing people's lives the first time they heard them. I saw an interview with Springsteen where he's like, my life changed when I heard that first hit of the snare on Like a Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
And I felt the same way when I heard it.
Right.
40 years later, you know, like.
Same. Yeah. And that's like with my kid, he's 10. It's definitely happening. He was like a passive Dylan fan, but putting it on, I'm kind of like, hey, let's not put on the Chalamet version. Let's do the Dylan one. Yeah. Come on.
I had a proud dad moment this week when I put on, I can't remember what we were talking about. And I said, I think I put on Blowin' in the Wind, or I put on like either the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, or it might have been Mr. Tambourine Man, one of the earlier acoustic things. My daughter, who's 6, goes, and I didn't know. She certainly heard his voice a lot around the house, but she goes, I never knew Bob Dylan could be so peaceful. And I said, I really appreciate that you know who that is on the.
Oh my God! And she said peaceful.
Yeah, that's profound.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's what she said. I go, oh, he can do it all, hon. He's
like, this guy's pretty good.
Yeah,
check it out. Yeah, my kid got into Tambourine Man.
Yeah.
That's one he gravitated to, and then like since then he's been like gone through Just Like a Woman and a few others. And then there's a really good scene in the movie where like he's doing The Times They Are Changing, and it's like you're like kind of led to believe it's the first time he's playing it, but the crowd catches onto it and they're singing along at the end of every verse.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. It's corny.
Yeah.
And it's cool. Like it's a moment.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And Blowin' in the Wind has a very kind of similar thing where like it's the first time him and Joan Baez sing together. It's just him reading that off of, playing it for her and her reading it over his shoulder. And like, but which again, I'm like, this is very manufactured. This is very corny. And my kid's like, he turned to me and was like, thanks for bringing me, Dad. Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Oh that's it right there.
Yeah, we can go.
Yeah.
Take your popcorn, get your icy. We're heading home.
But it was like twofold. One, it was like, I was like, oh, I love that she knows who Bob Dylan is. Like that to me, that may not be cool in school for her, but for me, that's like the coolest thing in the world. And I was also like, man, I'm turning into my dad. Like, cause I know that my dad was just hoping we would recognize Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan when we were 6 years old.
Yeah. Did you call him?
No, I haven't told him yet, but he would probably get a kick out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like, you did good, son.
Yeah.
Taught her how to throw a ball. She knows who Bob Dylan is.
Yeah. You're doing all right.
Okay, so your music.
Yeah.
We were talking about this. You're primarily a guitar player.
Yeah.
And so you were saying like you might have 2 original tunes on a record.
Yep.
Or something.
I think the record I have coming out now, I cut 4 originals and I kept 2 that I put on the record, and I'll do something with the other 2 at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you go about finding songs?
It's what I'll do is normally there was a period in my life where all I listened to was this like kind of 1920s like ragtimey blues country stuff. And then there was like the Oh Brother Where Art Thou, and that got me down like the Doc Watson range. In some ways, I have this group of maybe 50 or 60 songs that I've kind of been working with mostly over the last 4 years. And I will add, at one point I was adding new songs constantly. I was always digging up songs, looking for something to learn. But really what I have now is like, I got to a point where I learned those pieces, and what I really wanted to do was to make them my own as best as I could,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like for the last number of years, once I got to that 50, 60 song grouping, my bigger focus has been on listening to other guitar players, other interpretations of it, and just playing them over and over again like I do live, really starting to have them come into my own in some ways. And that's been my real fulfilling thing, I think, recently. But so much of it was like listening back to like a lot of the records from it, like Dave Van Ronk. I think I'd probably play, if we couldn't, may he rest in peace. But if we were on the same bill, I don't think we could play a set. Like we probably know more than half our songs are the same songs. I mean that, and like because he had heard all those John Hurt records and all that. And so,
yeah.
But those guys, Doc Watson would be the other huge one for me.
Oh, yeah.
As far as repertoire.
Did you ever get to see Doc?
I did not ever get to see
I got
Doc.
to see him twice.
Did you? Yeah.
And it was incredible.
Yeah.
Both times.
It's hard to say I ever have a favorite guitar player. It changes time to time. But he's certainly a spirit that I try to, I don't know, be in touch with, I guess, as far as the way he approaches songs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard not to completely fall in love with it.
Yeah.
Who else?
I mean, my other big hero would be Jorma Kaukonen from Hutson, who was kind of helped really get me going on this fingerstyle thing. And he was playing all those same songs too. And he kind of had a funny quote once where he was like, man, it's hard to play a gig with a bunch of other folk musicians. Like, we all just know the same songs, and it is kind of true, But there's a reason people have played those songs for 100 years. They're great,
What's it like taking that into a restaurant at lunch today, or like an audience that doesn't know that you're coming, doesn't know who you are, and has no experience with this kind of music? What's like, how are you hooking them?
Yeah. I'll be honest, I normally go for the guitar first. It's like I try to get the few flashy things I know. I'll try to lure them in with some of that, and then from there I'll try to, if I can, all you need is one table. If you got one table that's into you, it's like, that's I'm fine, Yeah. And then I'll start trying to, I love to talk about the songs too. There's those gigs you just sit there and play, and I don't have any problem with that either. But if someone's willing to engage, like, I will chat about where the song came from, where I found it, where I heard it, and all that kind of thing. And I think that one of my goals has been to make these songs is to move them into the modern times, I guess. Not that they need to be, they certainly don't. They're perfectly fine the way they are, but I think to continue to be played, there's not, I think for me, like, I started looking at all these songs, and there are a lot of songs out there that I think people should still be listening to, and I was like, well, I'm going to be the one to play them, I guess, because I love them. I will never get sick of playing "Make Me Down a Pallet on the Floor," or "I Saw the Light," like, I just won't ever get sick of it. I love it, and I've come to realize that, like, if you can approach it in the right way, that those melodies are timeless, and people are attracted to them.
For sure. What's the most modern song you play?
Well, it's funny. I had to go through this recently for some to copyright stuff, So the vast majority of what I play is mostly public domain now, or has, within the next year or two, is moving into the public domain, because it's going
That's
to that
over 50 years in the U.S.?
It's 95 in the U.S.
Okay.
Or 50 years after the death of the person. And the big joke is always like, the copyright is whoever ran to the copyright person first, There's many people that will say that, Son House wrote a lot of those Robert Johnson songs. None of us will ever really know the truth of all that. The one I think that was most modern, I do "Drown in My Own Tears," which I think is like a 40s, right? But I didn't know that "Going Down Slow," which I had learned on a Mance Lipscomb recording, was actually a guy named St. Louis Jimmy Oden, and that's like a 50s song.
Okay.
And that's probably the most, other than ones I've written, the most modern song I'm playing.
Do you hear other new songs that you think you could approach from this angle, or like, appropriate is the wrong word, like reverse appropriate, I guess?
Yeah, sometimes when I hear one, I think I'm trying to think of some recent ones. There's a long list of songs I've tried to learn, or that I have learned, but just don't work for me, And I think that's a really important thing, is like, just because you can play songs in that genre doesn't mean every single one works,
Sure.
That it connects with you, and that when you sing it, it connects with other people. Because there's a long list of songs I wish I could play, but just don't work,
Yeah. I used to play in a bluegrass string band thing, and you would always get those people like taking new songs and bluegrassing them up.
Yeah.
And then they might be popular, and someone would go, you guys should play that.
Yeah.
And I really always tried to steer clear. I'd hear some of them.
Yeah.
And think, oh, that's really cool. That really works. But I really tried hard to, I played with a guy who'd be like, let's learn that. He was a metalhead, so he'd be like, let's learn this Black Sabbath song or something. I'm like, no, we can't, dude. We can't. It just doesn't work. Or it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. I always like, I remember when I lived in Colorado, that was like a huge thing. Like, you'd have like picking on Petty, picking on Dylan, picking on this. And there's some of it that worked really well, but there were definitely a few I went to that was like, stretching the envelope a little bit, you know.
Yeah. Those records, that's what they should have been called.
Exactly.
Was like stretching on.
Yeah.
Because like a handful of them, it works great.
I was like, American Girl sounds just perfect the way it is. Doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
Bluegrass.
Don't mess with that.
Yeah.
For sure. Let's see.
So it's interesting, like the difference between interpolation and sampling.
Yeah.
Right. And then, Ed Sheeran has talked about a lot of this and has gotten in trouble for it, right? But they've tracked back old gospel and even old things back to like the 1500s, like certain chord progressions.
Absolutely.
And so that stuff seems to be timeless, and it's like finding the right ones that are timeless at the right time where the copyright record industry thing ain't going to hit you.
Yeah, that is true. And then the copyright thing is funny. Like you can take arrangement credits and all that. And I didn't have the energy for all that. I was like, I just credited everything as traditional, or if I knew where I got it from, where I'd borrowed it from, I credit it to that person. And then sometimes put like arrange my name. But it's funny you mentioned that, because today I did the song that I know is a John Hurt song, which I think actually is considered a traditional song, Richland Women's Blues, which is one that I do. But it's the same song as Midnight Special. Someone was like, I know, is that a Lead Belly song? I was like, it's not, but it's the same melody and chord changes.
Right.
Same melody and chord changes, or like the song I'll Be All Right, which I learned off a Reverend Davis record, is just We Shall Overcome with different lyrics.
Right. Yeah. So we were listening to your record earlier, and it reminded me of my old family reunions, which there was a bunch of pickers, and it was a bunch of gospel, players and singers and fiddles and whatnot, and it's very similar chord progressions and melodies that are coming out of old gospel and hymnal songs that are great and fun to get around and just have a great time playing together.
Oh yeah, the first time I heard someone go from a 1 chord to a dominant 7 chord for the 2, like where they make the 2 a dominant 7, which is like considered kind of the gospel change. I was hooked, and I was like, well, where else do I find that sound,
Yeah.
And those old gospel songs are where that came from. And we hear that all the time now in music.
Yeah. How was the travel?
It was interesting. It was, actually, to be honest with you, I'll give Texas credit. Once I crossed into Texas, the roads were great. Oklahoma was a mess.
Really?
Yeah. We probably got about 6 inches of snow up in Tulsa.
Okay. Yeah, that's about what we had in Denton.
Yeah.
And but the neighborhoods were, all snowed, all covered, but the interstates they took care of.
Yeah, it was great. It was smooth.
I had
coming down.
Ill-advised gig in Fort Worth last night that I didn't want to be the person to shut it down.
Yeah.
But was like, hey, what if we just didn't? Because a couple people were dropping out. And I was like, what if we just didn't do it? And we ended up doing it. It was great. It was fine.
Yeah.
And the trip down was great. The most treacherous parts of it were in my neighborhood getting home.
Yeah. Okay. I was texting my buddy driving up who, I'm a long-haired guy driving a Subaru through rural Oklahoma. I've heard every joke that can be made about someone who drives a Subaru when I've stopped at gas stations. And I texted my buddy who lives down that area. So I go, let me come pull that F750 out with my Outback for you today.
They love that.
That rear wheel drive. You gonna get out of that?
Truck guys love that. Do you have any like going to Minnesota or anything like that? Do you have any like harrowing snow travel stories or anything that was just?
I've had some cold that a couple times where I've driven late at night in the cold that I've been like, I'm in the middle of nowhere. Like if I break down, what am I gonna like?
Right.
It's -10. What am I gonna do? Yeah. And so that's been the worst. Snow wise, I've driven through some big storms, but I grew up in Massachusetts. I'm pretty well used to the.
Oh yeah.
I'm kind of used to the weather. The cold is the one thing that I don't think you ever really. It's like the heat in the summer. I don't know who gets used to 100 degrees and humid.
Right.
And the same with like -10. And I've had some moments. Those moments where you're like, oh man, it's 12:30 and 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm driving on I-80 in Iowa, and it's -10. Like, who's gonna find me? Like, I haven't seen a car in 20 minutes.
Yeah. You start to go. Only an idiot would be out on the road right now.
I'm like, and I'm doing this because I'm chasing $200 gigs. But that's what I do. And it's what it is.
They saw that Winnebago outside of the Mercury.
No.
Out back. Okay.
No.
I stayed. there was a big snowstorm there. I might have told you this last time you were here, but there was the guy who was, I mean, it was really coming down. They have a fireplace in the Mercury, and it was awesome. We had a really great night, and some guy told me, he's like, it starts, you see a storm like this coming in, and some people head for the grocery store, but I head for the liquor store.
Oh, yeah.
And he was already at the bar, or he was also at the bar that night. It is coming down. We're gonna crash in that Winnebago that has like one of those little space heaters in it, and finally at some point someone's like, we have to get in the car and start heading home. Yeah, like they couldn't sleep or whatever, and so we get in the car and we start going, and it's just, I mean, it's one of those you can feel you can feel them losing traction here and there. I guess the roads hadn't been treated, and this might speak to Oklahoma's preparedness for this kind of thing. But we did make it through. It was really bad, like north of Denton and Sanger. And then we did make it home. And then this was a thing where a lot of people got stuck on the highway. Like, I don't know exactly how it worked out. And we were probably a couple hours from being like, whoever's idea it was to be like, get in the car, let's go. Probably saved us from being just stranded on 35 with everybody else. And I was against it. I was like, let's just tough it out. And freeze in this Winnebago.
It's an interesting thing that makes us do these kinds of things, but that makes us be like, and it's almost hard to talk about with like other people who haven't done it, to be like, wait, so you're going for 6 nights to Minnesota in January to play. It's like, to me, I'm like, well, what else would I, that's my, that's what I do, you know? But it's hard. It's almost like when you tell that to someone who isn't around music, they're like, what, they look at you like, what are you thinking, And it's a funny thing.
That came up last night to someone. I was like, when the people on the news or on TxDOT, they're saying, if you don't have to get out, don't. They're talking to us. If you're driving to a bar to play music, don't do it.
What's funny you said
we're like, why wouldn't I do that? That's what I do.
Well, it's funny. We, Thursday when the storm kind of rolled in, I have a residency at the Colony in Tulsa right now at 6:00 on Thursdays. And I went over and I was like, like 2 of the bandmates called, like, we still playing? I'm like, oh, we're still going, It was packed.
Yeah.
Everyone rolled out. I guess what they do in Tulsa.
Yeah. Yeah. They'll show up.
Yeah.
What are you going to play today?
I think I'm going to do Bye Bye Baby Blues, which is, it's on this next record that's coming out. It's in the mixing process right now.
Okay.
And then it's a song from the late 20s by a player named Little Hat Jones. And I first heard it on an album by this guy named Roy Bookbinder, who is still around, still playing. He learned directly from kind of Reverend Gary Davis and a lot of those guys in the 60s. And he's a hilarious, like, great guitar player and hilarious storyteller that still comes around. And on his first record, he did a version of the song. That was the first place I heard it. And my influences have gotten more into some of like the Jerry Reed kind of stuff. And so I have some of those elements to it that I've kind of added for guitar breaks.
So, what year is that record from, the one you're talking about?
It's probably 1970.
Okay.
Yeah, late 60s maybe.
And you talked about kind of going through a phase pre Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, where you're into 78s and 20s music, ragtime.
Probably be like right after Oh Brother, Where Art Thou.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of right after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did Oh Brother begat your like search into that?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, well, what it was like all of a sudden, I was looking for like, like I'll Fly Away, and at the time, right around when that happened, I was actually interning for Rounder Records, who had Alison Krauss on the label at that time. So I could go in there and get whatever CDs I wanted. So I got a whole bunch of those things. But then they also were releasing, there was that going on. They were also re-releasing, it was just after Katrina, and they were re-releasing all of this New Orleans music. And so I started hearing like all this like Jelly Roll Morton stuff, And then from there, like that like Dirt Farmer album came out. It was like all these pieces started to come together, and also like online streaming music started where you could just look up a song and see the 100 different versions of it,
Yeah.
And that was where I started to see like, oh, wait, 200 people have done I'll Fly Away. Like, well, let me listen to a whole bunch of them, And I got really into, John Hurt was like my first kind of like gateway drug to like the kind of alternating thumb style picking. And then from there it was like Doc Watson, At that point, Doc Watson to me seemed so over my head that I couldn't.
Yeah, what's the one that's like, I had a friend who was working on Deep River Blues.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, I think I even heard it. I rewatched an interview with Dave Van Ronk where he was like, I just thought it was two guys playing. And he was like, and I walked by a dude on the street who was playing and I was like, oh, because he was playing with a flat pick and he just assumed that was two guys playing with flat picks. And then he was like, okay. And then he was like, I was in a trance. I sat there and watched him and then went home and was like, put the pick down and start trying to figure that out.
It was a little bit like that for me too. Like,
it
was like, I have to know how to do this. Like, I can't stop till I know how to do this. And I knew how to flat pick, And I think the John Hurt stuff I liked was so, I mean, besides it just being so beautiful and wonderful to listen to. And it's, it's easier on the ears than some of the kind of Delta stuff that from that era, it's a little more melodic in ways that we're used to in popular music. But also he was using chords I understood. I was like, oh, that's a C, that's an F, that's a G, Whereas like Doc Watson was, using inversions up the neck that to me were just like, I was like, what? This is so far beyond what I can grasp right now,
For sure.
That was like a big thing.
Do you know who Elijah Wald is?
Yes, I do know who Elijah Wald is.
Have you read anything of his?
I haven't. I know the book. I know the Dylan movies after his book. He's got a great YouTube channel that I bet most of the songs I do he's covered on that YouTube channel where he goes into the musicology of all those songs and stuff. I love his writing.
He's my current like favorite.
Oh yeah,
grouchy old man. Writer nerd thing, and he got sort of on a soapbox. It's he's getting a lot of heat right now off the Dylan movie, and then being, I guess, his current thing in the last couple days was you would not call Reverend Gary Davis, Elizabeth Cotton, like you would not call that Travis picking.
It would be like Piedmont picking.
Yeah, and he was saying, because if you got it from Mother Maybelle or Merle Travis or anyone after that he was basically being like, in the white tradition, you would call it Travis picking. And if it was anything, if they're black people doing that music before Merle Travis, then it's a different thing, and don't confuse them.
They are different. There are differences, and though even all of them are such different players, and like had different things going on. But I always, to me, the way it was described to me was that music, like the, like Reverend Davis, Blind Boy Fuller, Blind Blake, the folks who were really doing intricate picking kind of in the late 20s. And then of course, Reverend Davis played on and on. His first recording session was with Blind Boy Fuller. That was like the Piedmont style picking because it came out of the Piedmont area of North Carolina.
Okay.
And to my ear, and he would have to answer this, someone who is a true musicologist, it always had a more complex sound to it, reminiscent of some of the bluegrass stuff. Like I heard elements of bluegrass in that stuff, which would make sense given the regional area it came from. Whereas you had really the more kind of monotonic bass sound that was coming from the South, some of the like, and I always say, like, when someone puts like Tom Pevear blues guitarist, I'm like, oh, it's the worst thing someone can like, because what people associate with blues guitar is either like that kind of monotonic bass or like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Right. And so, that's kind of how I always saw it. And then like there was like the Merle Travis, Chet, Atkins, who took it to even a whole other level beyond that too.
For sure. Who else is like really doing it now?
I mean, my favorite guitarists that are like doing it now would be there's Tom Feldman, who is up in Minneapolis. I'll actually get to see him this week, who is a huge influence on me.
Okay.
I would argue he's one of the best acoustic slide guitar players going. I mean, I think he's unbelievable. He can kind of do anything. Nat Myers, I really liked his new album that came out. This guy Frank Fotusky, who's up in Maine, is great. This there's a couple of the names too that are just Brooks. I think his name's like Brooks Forsyth too. I saw him recently online. He's a great picker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it like a small enough community where you guys all know each other?
Yeah.
Like, do they know who you are?
Oh yeah. So a handful of them definitely. Okay. Frank and Tom I'm kind of friends with, but there's definitely, there's not that many of us doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to go play?
Yeah, let's go play some music.
All right.
Sounds great.
I said bye-bye, pretty baby, bye-bye. Well, I said bye-bye, pretty baby, bye-bye. Well, I probably won't see you no more. May God bless you everywhere you go. Well, I said bye-bye, pretty baby, bye-bye. You know I tried to love my sweet woman, but she didn't understand. You know I tried to love my sweet woman, she didn't understand. Well, now I tried to love my sweet woman, but the girl did not understand. And now she realized she's in trouble since she met that other man. Said I'm going away now to leave, mama, can I carry you? Well, I said I'm going away now to leave, mama, can I carry you? Well, I'm going away now to leave, mama, can I carry you? Well, I said bye-bye, pretty baby, bye-bye. I said bye-bye, pretty baby, bye-bye. Well, I said bye-bye, baby, bye-bye. Well, now you know I probably won't see you no more. May God bless you everywhere you go. Well, I said bye-bye, pretty baby, bye-bye.